You are now tuned in to the On Track with All My People podcast with your hosts, Amber Peters, A.K.A. Mizz P.
And Daitwan David, A.K.A. Dr. Change, ain't nothing strange about it, A.K.A. Mr. David, A.K.A. Hey Yo Mizz.
Oh my God, Daitwan, can we just start the show already? Welcome back, everybody. Hey, we back.
We are back. We are back and looking forward to this particular episode.
Yes.
So, who are we here with?
It's your girl, Mizz P, Amber Peters, you know. you know, and I'm here with this guy.
Dr.
You know
Change.
the guy.
We start off first with Dr. Change, A.K.A. Daitwan David.
Put
Daitwan
some spec
David.
on his name, please.
Yeah, there's nothing strange about it. But let me tell you what's strange.
You.
I've realized it may be me. it actually may be me. I'm getting the stage where, you know, y'all call them grays. I call them prominent silvers, right? Don't say anything smart.
It's your wisdom.
My wisdom.
Listen, I can't talk about nobody.
Yeah.
I don't know if y'all seen me lately, but if y'all see me in these streets, you know we match. So I have nothing bad to say.
It's just that, you know, young women, y'all got these tricks. Y'all can kind of hide it, right? Like y'all can hide it in twist, right?
For now.
But I'm recognizing that I'm getting the call Unc, OG, all those extra, you know, terms with age or whatever. And there's a lot of phrases. No, they ain't calling me that. They better not ever. But there's a lot of phrases that, you know, young people are using. Things that, you know, I get as part of pop culture. But one thing that kind of came about is our young people, they are pushing back and challenging on, you know, what is generally accepted, like, this is what you should do, right? Like, and so I had a workshop in a school about a month and a half ago, and I was talking to students about money related to financial aid, and everything that I was presenting, the student kept saying, Cap, that's Cap. Why didn't you come here and speak to us about this earlier? And I was like, young man, this is my first day meeting.
It's like, I just met you, bro.
I just met you. But I definitely appreciated the fact that he was questioning a lot of things that were being said. Like, for instance, you know, just the general and the normative idea about what you do after high school is to go to college, right? And just kind of thinking about what is supposed to afford you and allow you to be able to accomplish. And this young man was basically coming from a mindset of just like, hey, I know a lot of people that went to college and are struggling right now. So all you saying, I'm not accepting none of that. And I was like, you know, we're going to have a real talk, right? And I want to be able to kind of break down and explain why some of the people may be struggling right now with college degrees, right? And I also want to put respect on the fact that there are other pathways for students to explore to be able to, you know, kind of get into a bunch of different avenues for themselves. So I want to start off with a question, right? Because one of the things he was pushing back on is related to money, right? And
that part.
He was basically saying, Mr. David, it was the equivalent of things are not adding up. But, of course, in 2023, the math is not math.
It ain't.
Right? The math is not math.
It's not.
I'll tell you what.
I agree with him.
I am going to speak to me being blessed with being afforded opportunities to work and consult and be in different places or whatever. But the math is not math for me in one particular area. If you go into Idealist or hear certain jobs, right? They're asking you to have mad degrees and paying you maybe only $3 more than what they're doing in like retail and fast food restaurants.
Make it make sense, people.
The math is not mathing, right? Like the math is not mathing there. But Amber, for you, the math is not mathing where?
The math is not mathing. So I have this conversation with students all the time, right? The math is not mathing when it comes to like student debt, right? And I think for a lot of young people, it's like the scariest thing to talk about. But like the math is not mathing. It says right here. I'm gonna look at my notes right here.
Okay, with the notes.
45.3 million people owe $1.76 trillion in student debt. How? And I'm just like, you know, when we get into averages and things like that, and we're gonna break it further down. But like when we get into averages and things like that, if like the average is 30, like how did we get to $1.76 trillion? Like where did it come from? And like how can we help kids to avoid that going forward in the future? Because the math is absolutely not mathing.
Okay, so I'm somebody that's definitely interested in the hard facts and the numbers. I pulled out my phone calculator, and those numbers 1.76 trillion divided by 40, you said 43 or 45? 45.3 million people is about $39,000 in average debt, right? Like that's a lot of money. I know my student debt is more than that. I know a lot of people that their student debt is higher than that. So when Biden was trying to come through with that forgiveness situation, there was a lot of people rallying. Like you might have earned a vote, but I know people kind of push back on that for various reasons. But still, I think one of the things I want to start back from first. What is you think some of the reasons in which young people wind up in college debt?
I mean, think about it. It's predatory. Like, loans are predatory by nature, right? Anything like credit, all that other stuff. Yes, it's wonderful that you can borrow money when you don't have it. But the problem here is that the education that goes with it, right? I know when I had to take out a loan, so if you go back into my history, and I'll tell it again for those of you who are just meeting me, when I went to college,
you just like to talk about yourself.
At first, I was getting a whole bunch of money, right? Like I was getting everything paid for. I'm a CUNY student, CUNY alum, and everything was great, right? And then my mom got married, and I'd be telling her and my stepdad, like, yo, y'all could have waited 2 more years. 2 more years. Y'all could have waited 2 more years, and I could have been good. Right? And so those first 2 years, I was good to go. I have no issues, nothing else, right? And then all of a sudden, they get married. They went from a 20-something-ish a year household to a 80,000 plus a year household, and they took back everything, right? I was getting a whole $250 from TAP. I was like, what am I supposed to do with this, right? And so when I took out my first loan, yes, they told me I had to do the education that came with it, sign the master promissory note, blah, blah, blah. But nobody in those offices explained to me exactly what I was getting into, right? It was like, you had to take this quiz. And for many people, if you're just trying to get the money so you could pay for school, because there is a deadline, right? You have to have your bill paid by a certain amount of time. I did read through, but I don't think it clicked. I don't think it made sense in that moment. I understood, but didn't really understand. And so I signed on the dotted line, right? And then $20,000 later, I'm like, why do I have a $20,000 anything going to CUNY, right?
Right.
The other part is I had great grades. So I absolutely should apply for scholarships. Nobody talked to me about anything. I didn't know of any scholarships that were on campus, off campus, or anything. So there was a lot of no information. I can't even call it misinformation. No information whatsoever about the financial aid process, and also really anything that spoke to loans in particular, right? I feel like now, we are doing a better job of educating students about these different loan options and what they mean and the terms and difference between private versus federal. We're doing a better job now doing that, but at that time I didn't have any of that information, and that's how I got caught up.
So I would agree. I think there is definitely, a lot of predatory practices, also depending on the schools that students are going to. For sure, the proprietary schools, for-profit schools, etc. Those are, where students can get caught up in debt. And I just read a fact that it seems as though women are attending the proprietary schools at larger rates than men, and are definitely getting hit with those kind of crazy bills for degrees that may not even mean anything beyond them after they graduate. I think there is a lack of information at that point in time. I also think that there's a sense of desperation. Students are, wanting to figure out ways to just I just need to go. I just need to get out of this space by any means necessary, right? And so they're more so I'm going to figure this out later on, right? And not fully understanding those numbers where the math is not mathing, right? Understanding you can pull up 10,000, I can make 10,000 after I get this particular degree, not realizing that interest is going to come in, and you keep paying the minimum amount or nothing at all, it's going to compound and get crazy. So I want to ask one follow-up question.
That part, that's the part that I didn't understand.
Okay.
Right? The compounding interest,
For
right?
Sure.
I took out a certain amount of money, but then after, and it wasn't I wasn't paying my bills. I was paying my bills.
Mm-hmm.
But it felt like I was just on this hamster wheel and I couldn't get off because, I'm paying, but I guess I'm not paying enough, right? It was a video I watched when I was talking to my students. I was at Opportunity Charter School. Shout out to y'all. At the time, and I had pulled out a video, and I had found a video. It was a couple, and they were trying to figure out how to pay down their student loan debt. And they had this Excel sheet that they used in order to figure out how to get past the principal, right?
For sure.
How to attack the principal, because they were like in the interest payments only, right? It wasn't until that moment, I was good in 30 something years old before I understood what that meant. And I was like, oh, that's why I don't see any change in my
100%.
loan balance, is because nobody explained that the concept of compounding interest and how you need to get to the principal amount. And I was like, wow, right? So now, because I know it now I have to, I feel like it's my responsibility to teach it, but like that, I think that's the things that we need to be talking about. It's like, not that loans are terrible, it's, you know, you really need to understand what you're getting into.
That is the key
issue.
part, because there's a lot of students that are automatically equating college with debt.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a shift with many of my students, that when we started talking about college, they was like, Mr. David, I am not trying to get into debt. And I was like, wait. There's a conversation that we want to get into first. Yes, we don't want to get into debt, but we also don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot with certain opportunities. So I want to ask you a certain question. What should students be looking at and evaluating when they are reviewing these packages?
So one of the things that I tell kids to really look at is like, look to see if your gift aid, which is your grants and scholarships, if your gift aid is big enough, and also look at your loans to see how much loan they are offering you, right? Also remembering that students can only borrow but so much, right? The issue that I usually see is that a lot of times they'll be like, oh, well, you know, you can do this through a Parent Plus loan. And for some of our kids, their parents do not qualify.
For sure.
You know, most of it is based on credit and things of that nature. So if their credit is shot, their chances of getting a Parent Plus loan is like in the toilet. So we really want them to really understand, like, okay, so like looking at that gift aid, what does that look like? I think sometimes people get caught up on the gift aid though, right? Like, had a kid with a package, $65,000. They was getting like a $33,000 scholarship. They saw the $33,000 scholarship. They got excited, and I was like, okay, whoop, pump your brakes. Let's really look at this right now. Okay, so you're getting $33,000 in free money. Great. But then when you started to look at the rest of it, it was like, I think the parents had to come out of pocket for $27,000, and the kid was like, oh yeah, my dad could do that, right? Or my mom could do that, and was like completely disappointed when they couldn't, right? Because it isn't a conversation that's had about, let's pull our resources so that if we have to take a chunk out of this loan, right? Like we can pay out of pocket for some of it. There's no conversation happening about that, right?
Sure.
We just assume that, you know, financial aid is going to take care of everything. And so I see that a lot. So focus on the gift aid, but like don't get caught up on the gift aid. Really like look at it against the loans that they're offering you, against what should come out of pocket. And I think that will help you to make the most sense of your package, whether it's a good deal or a shady deal. If you can see that, you know, maybe I'm not coming out of pocket for too much, then yeah, go for it, right? Like, you know, like there's some kids that might have to take out a little $5,000 loan. That's fine, right? But then when we're talking about, you know, if I can't go to college if I don't pay $27,000, that's a whole different conversation, right? Because where is this $27,000 supposed to come from? Is it going to come from another loan? I promise you, and like we need to have this conversation with families. I do not believe in private loans. I do not care about, oh, it's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity for them to land themselves in some debt and to be in financial trouble. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I'm very, very, very concerned with is our kids' financial capacity once they are done with college. And we're not talking about like, you know, the jobs that they're picking, right? You know, if you decide you want to major in Pokemon training, is there a job in Pokemon training? You need to know if that's possible, right?
I would be nice with it.
How much money is that going to pay you, right? A lot of people aren't even thinking about that, so they don't have the full trajectory, right? And we know, you know, a lot of people aren't trained to think that far ahead, or it might cause them some anxiety to feel like I have to start planning this life of mine at 17, 18,
right.
And I have to know what kind of job I want to do. But like this idea of like smart planning, like even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, you you do need to like have something that's in line with you being able to either pay back whatever you borrowed, or to be able to set yourself up as an adult going forward. So having these conversations are super, super important to all of that. But that's the thing that I see, is that people get caught up. They see that, 30, I got big money. And it's like, you have big money, yes, but you still have a gap that is so wide that you or your parents have no idea how you're going to feel. That's the conversation that I think needs to be had.
Yeah, so you bring up key points. A large part of this conversation is that there's not enough information, and there's also not enough transparent conversations about what is happening. I think it's going to be extremely important for families to sit down at the table and be like, hey, we need to have these conversations earlier. I want you to understand this is the realm of where we at and what we're going to try to make sure it happens for you, so that, the young people after May 1st are not being like, I need to scramble for other options because I realize that my parents really don't have what I thought they had. In addition to that, I think that I want to take a step back. So first thing first, I also think young people and their families need to have a full understanding of terminology, right?
Yes.
So we're talking about, thinking about the cost of attendance. I want them to understand that, because oftentimes they may confuse tuition as being like the entire thing.
Right.
If I pay tuition, right, like everything is all good, versus like, no, there's other costs. Like there's fees, and if you're rooming and boarding and dorming and all that other stuff, there's other things to consider in that space as well. So that's something that I want to make sure that young people and their families understand the terminology. Next up, I think it's going to be important for them to be able to sit down and do the math. Make sure the math is mathing, right?
Please do.
Right.
A lot of y'all don't.
Not at all. Thinking about, I had a young man, that he wanted to go to be a vet, right? And he got into a school that was going to allow him to be a vet. And he said, they're offering me, I think it might have been like a $28,000 scholarship. He didn't read the fine print, which is like you have to be eligible for HOP, right? Which we'll talk about opportunity programs in another space. And so, now he realizes as of right now he doesn't qualify for that. Now he has to pivot. Yeah. Like he was stuck on 6 weeks telling everybody, I got a scholarship. I'm out. And it's good to have that pride, but there's so many other things that are missing there. Let's take a step back though, because one of the things that I think is impacting this, and I think you got some information on your fancy composition iPad. One of the things that we got a chance to kind of look at through NCAN, right, was like FAFSA and FAFSA completion rates. And there were some challenges.
Get it together, people.
There's some challenges there, right? So like young people are not completing FAFSA applications at the rate that would allow them to be able to afford college, and there's a lot of money left on the table. Yeah. So what do you think is happening there?
I mean, a lot of it is, it runs the gamut, I should say, because for some kids, it's the parents ain't giving up the information, right? For some families, they get stuck on a piece of the application and they don't reach out for the help that they need. Sometimes people are just behind the 8 ball, right? Like, I realize that everybody has their different ways of doing things, and they place urgency around certain things, but not everything, right? And so, in some schools, the financial aid might be kind of left for later. For sure. Right? Oh, we got through this application process, now you can chill. And it's like, no, you can't. You gotta apply for this financial aid. Like, you gotta be on it. I always end up like with schools where like it's April, May, we just starting FAFSA with some kids. Crazy, right? So a lot of them are leaving the money on the table, one, because they're literally just not getting the application done. And that's another conversation to be had, is like, if you're serious about going to college, you needed to be the first person to, as soon as that application dropped, which we know there is some changes coming. Lord Jesus, I think they said it's supposed to be now December is now the opening date for the next FAFSA, not October. That's a whole different conversation. But being on top of those dates, right? If you know the date is October 1st, right? You should, within that month, have all your things ready. But like, for not having those conversations early enough, to let them know, like, hey, some of these funds are first come, first served too.
For sure.
Right? If we're not doing that, then we can't expect them to Had the numbers.
So let's think about that. Looking at the NCAN site right now, NCAN mentioned that the high school class of 2022, 2.1 million completed FAFSAs as of June 30th of 2022, right? Which 2.1 million, a lot of students completed it. Based on that, though, there were only 52% completed FAFSA. Only 52%, right? So that's a little above half, 1 out of every 2. That's way too much that's being left on the table. And I know for me, you mentioned some of the barriers. Some students, their parents are, reluctant to give the tax information, right? There's other people that feel like, hey, we don't qualify. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to be understood. There are certain programs that would not even allow you to get the institutional aid unless the FAFSA is done.
Right.
So, we want young people, I don't think there's going to be a detractor to completing the FAFSA. Maybe it's just overwhelming in terms of the amount of paperwork. I will say this, though, really quick, because I want to get to some of the things we want young people to kind of focus on. Like, if they realize that the debt is too high, what should they be doing? I spoke to a representative at a financial aid, called the number, and I have a student that her mother is deceased. Her father is not in her life. She lives with her grandmother. Grandmother was the legal guardian. And so right now, with some of the changes that they made, it is not processing her application. Therefore, she cannot do her TAP application for New York State. So we tried to get the situation rectified because in looking at the FAFSA application, we cannot see any of the issues. I spoke to the rep. We can't see any of the issues. The rep told us that we have to call one of the schools that she applied to, right, and get them to their financial aid office to verify, like, hey, this is the correct information. And then we can kind of fix it on our end. I was like, Miss, that's a barrier.
That doesn't make any sense.
How does that make any sense? What are you talking about right now?
Not mathing.
The math is not mathing, right?
Because before, what it was, in her situation, right, because she is in legal guardianship, she has paperwork to prove, right? You put the FAFSA through, which is what usually happens, right? 100%. Put the FAFSA through, and then the school will verify on their end. She'll do the verification paperwork, because she's most likely going to get flagged. And then, you go forward like that. But if we're doing it this way, and you wonder why these numbers look like they do.
I mean, 100%.
How do you expect a kid to, be able to finish the process if you literally put a barrier that it's nothing that they can fix?
Correct.
It's literally nothing that they can
So, yeah, and then, it's going to create frustration, right?
Y'all making my hair hurt.
If they're not having somebody like me or somebody that's going to really kind of hold them down through the process, they're not going to get it done. They're not going to be able to do it. So, but let's kind of frame this. One of the questions I ask my young people, because I want you specifically to talk about what can be done. If they realize that they have a gap, out-of-pocket costs are too crazy, what can they do? Because a lot of them are just like, hey, it's over. What can they do? So I want to get to that. But first, if I ask young people, if a school costs $60,000, right, per year, and it's your dream school, do you go? 95% of them say, Mr. David, you're bugging. Who has that kind of money? All right. And what I learned, there's a summer where right before college, I worked with Kirby. They were selling vacuums, right? So we're going door to door selling vacuums, right? Knocking in people's homes or whatever. And this is one of the things that I learned. I'm not good at sales, but this is one of the things that I learned. I was told that you need to establish value before price. So as soon as we get in the door, people will be like, hey, how much does this thing cost? And it don't matter what it is. If you do not establish the value, your cost is going to be way too high, right? Mm-hmm. So that's first thing, right? So one of the things is we need young people to understand what is the value first that they're trying to get to. I do not want young people, especially in our communities, students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, to not apply to opportunities that are expensive because of the price tag.
Yeah.
I need them to understand they are for sure limiting their opportunity to be able to go to those institutions, right? Mm-hmm. And they also don't understand that for many of them, their brilliance, their talents, their skills are going to afford them an opportunity where people want to invest in them to be on those campuses, right? Yes. So we want them to think about price way after the fact. I get it. I get why young people need to kind of think about price at the forefront, but we don't need that to deter whether they're going to apply for an opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So if they receive the financial aid package, right, and they realize that there's a sizable gap, they don't have it in their account, they just don't have it, what do you think? What are some of the things that you feel like you advise young people to do?
So one is calling the financial aid department, speaking to the school directly, and seeing what can be done. And counselors out there, you guys are like a great force within this thing. A lot of you have a lot of pull. Some of you guys already have relationships built with certain institutions. You can also jump in on that child's behalf as well. So that's the first. And
counselors can write appeal letters, right?
They can write appeal letters.
Know what's going on.
They can write appeal letters. It's better coming from the student. But if you already have a relationship set up with a financial aid department, they're probably going to listen to you and be like, oh, well, this kid is brilliant and deserves a spot. Like, let's see what we can do, right? The worst they can say is no. Worst they can say we don't have it, right? But that is the first line of defense. After that,
with that being stated, really quick, I also want young people to understand that there will be certain times that schools may have money earmarked for a certain student, and that student chooses not to go to that school.
Yeah.
Right. So it may be reallocated to somebody else. You need to make sure that you are building a relationship. Hey, I really want to go here. I know when I worked directly with my financial aid counselor, I had an opportunity to get money that was redirected in other spaces. So that's the thing.
But that's part of advocating for yourself, right? And if we can also advocate on behalf of the student, right, it's a win-win.
For sure.
I would also say, like, if you have any relationships built in your community and things like that, looking for scholarship money, scholarship dollars are very helpful. Sometimes what I have is young people who are just like, they're not interested in doing the work. So if you have some things already ahead of time, like one of the things that I teach kids to do, and it is part of like my practice, is like, let's create an essay just to create an essay. Let's write this thing, right? Like thinking about if I had to advocate for myself for cost, what type of career do I want to be in, the type of college that I want to go to, or the reason why I want to go to college in the first place. I can then mix and match all these different essays to create new essays that will help me, right? That lessens the burnout for the student, and they always have some information to pull from, so they're never doing anything from scratch, right? So that's one thing. Scholarship dollars for sure, absolutely go after everything. And then at the end of the day, if the math is not math, then you get to make a different choice. And like, we need to be okay with like letting young people know that, one, there's another way in, right? Couldn't meet the mark for the cost this year. That doesn't mean that next year that's not possible, or 2 years from now that you can't transfer in. We can find other ways to make it more affordable, whether we start off at a more affordable school and then transfer in later. There's other ways to do it, right? Without, a kid feeling like, oh my God, I got to rob Peter to pay Paul in order to go to this school.
One last thing I want to say, I know we're about to wrap up the episode, is I want young people to work smarter. One of the things that I'm continuing to realize as we, through On Track with All My People, develop relationships, is to get with the organizations that are connected with the schools, right? The alumni chapters, right? The student organizations, the Greek organizations, right? These are organizations that are having like a part of their pillars is having civic responsibility to the community, right? And a lot of times what I'm hearing is that they cannot find enough people to give the scholarship to.
Oh, yeah.
So some of the students that some students may just kind of be getting it by default, right? Not to say that they're not deserving, but it's just that there's not enough applicants, right? So there is people that are really understanding the power and the value of these opportunities. Also,
Go local. I tell kids all the time, if you go to your local community, go to your mom and pop shops, go, right? Like, also, like, sometimes counselors, I want you guys to like comb your emails, because some of y'all be sitting on opportunities that y'all don't even know could be like almost like a shoe-in for the student. So definitely make sure that you're checking locally in your neighborhood, in the community boards, local all the things, right?
Unions,
right?
Check your parents' unions as well.
And for us counselors, we can be doing the work to make relationships with these people, so that, like, we got students that are ready and prepared to get these opportunities, right? It'll be an easier win for our kids if we can do that as well.
Let me also say this. One of the things that we hopefully, I know we will dedicate an episode for, is speaking about the for-profit proprietary schools, right? And I think in many of those instances, the young people that are exploring trades all the time getting into some of these schools and pursuing these trades, and getting
there's scholarships out there for them too?
There are scholarships for those. And so we want to make sure that young people, that this conversation is definitely something that is valuable to the different post-secondary options that young people are considering. But we're going to wrap up because we have other episodes coming up. But Amber, wrap us up. What is the main thought?
Listen, if the math is not math, then make a different choice.
Make a different choice.
Have conversations. And don't be afraid to have conversations with these young people. They are listening. They are ready to have the conversations that you think will make them uncomfortable. They already have been thinking about it. So just let's just have conversations and continue to influence that.
And I also want those that are practitioners supporting young people to please question and help the young people to question what is the mindset that is informing their choices, right? If they're operating out of fear, that's not that's not how we want them to make choices, right? They're afraid of getting in debt. Well, let's see if there are other opportunities to avoid getting in debt. If not, let's figure out how to pivot. So we'll come back with another episode. Please make sure the math matters. Get a new calculator if you need to.
Period.
Right? And we are here.
And we'll see you next time.
All right.
It's your girl, Miss P here, and Dr. Change, and we are out.
There we go. Appreciate y'all. I want to let people know real quick how you didn't believe me and support the black man during Women's History Month. I just want to make sure that's understood.
This man, too much. We out.